Hey, I bet you didn't know one of the biggest industries in today's standards almost went under in the 80s. The video game industry. I'm here to talk about that today. Before Wii Sports and handhelds, people had to seek out their entertainment. They would drive to the arcades, they'd make sure they had their bag full of quarters and be ready to spend the afternoon there. Arcades were such a big hit in the 70s and early 80s that coins actually became on short supply. The electronic gaming industry saw this as an opportunity to make a quick buck and jumped on the bandwagon. In today's market, there's about 3 main consoles out. Back then, at its peak, there were over a dozen to choose from. The Telstar company had over 14 iterations of their console. To put this in a bigger picture, Microsoft has only had 2 consoles out in the last 10 years. An overpopulation of hardware in the market with people that really were uninformed about the systems and the technology because it was so new at the time, it really messed up everyone's judgment and they didn't know what to buy. On top of all of that, there were add-ons to these consoles that basically, say you wanted to go in and buy a console, you'd go in to buy it, and then you wanted to get Pac-Man. Well, Pac-Man only ran with one of the add-ons, so you have to get the add-on now. This really impacted the confusion of the consumers. Not only were there a lot of consoles out, but they weren't all top-notch. The Atari 5200 was extremely buggy, and the controllers were one of the worst controllers of all time. The joystick wasn't self-centering, so when you'd push it forward, it would stay forward. So imagine playing Halo, you're running towards something, and you take your thumb off the joystick for a second, and your character continues to run right off the side of the cliff. That's no fun. The Atari 2600 was actually pumping out more games than the Atari 5200, which doesn't make any sense because it's the newer of the two. That'd be like you going to the store to get the new Battlefield for your PS3, and they only having it for PS2. To top it off, the games weren't much better than the consoles themselves. Most of them were buggy and unfinished. Even some of the AAA games back then were a big disappointment on the consoles. Well, there's still some of those today, but we won't talk about that right now. Pac-Man was one of the most successful arcade games of all time. It was so big that they actually had to expand the collection boxes in the cabinets to hold the quarters that were being pumped into it. Pac-Man himself was such an iconic figure that he even had his own clothing line. Atari was making so much money on this game that they thought, why not port it over to the consoles? This version was the start of the bad games, really, and didn't look anything like the arcade version and was extremely buggy. Here's where things really went wrong. There were about 10 million Atari 2600s out on the market. With the Pac-Man console version coming out soon, Atari published 12 million. They thought 2 million people were going to go out and actually buy an Atari 2600 just to get the Pac-Man version for their console. A lot of people actually returned their copy and demanded a refund. In June of 1982, the release of E.T. was so popular that the video game industry decided to transform the movie into a game to make a quick buck. Need I say more? 5 million copies of E.T. were made, only 1.5 sold. Just like Pac-Man, the extra copies went into a landfill, were crushed, and then cement was poured on top of them. Not the best publicity for video games. They even released a Rubik's Cube game. Like, come on, who even likes the original Rubik's Cube, let alone the game version? Let's add another component to all this mess. Home computers. The home computers were superior to the consoles for a few reasons. It had multiple programs it could run, like Word, spreadsheets, calculator. The games that were on it, the graphics actually were a lot better, the sound was better, and they were cheaper. Parents chose to buy computers for their kids instead of consoles because it had educational games like Oregon Trail, and parents saw the opportunity in their kids being able to play video games while they were able to watch TV. Even though computer sales never really passed console sales, with all the other factors, the market finally crashed in 1983. This was bad for business but good for consumers. Prices on everything dropped drastically, but most of consumers already lost interest. A lot of companies went out of business, but decided to continue selling overseas. Over in Japan, Nintendo's name was huge. They recently released a console and sold over 500,000 units. They decided to try the US to make a little bit of extra money. This didn't succeed in the States because Nintendo didn't earn a name for itself yet. But they kept at it and had better luck when they released the Nintendo Entertainment System. This mainly caught on because it wasn't related to video games, and it was associated as an entertainment system. Nintendo's sold over 50,000 copies and showing that there was hope in the market. This jump kicked the industry and brought some old competitors back and some new ones to the table, such as Sega. Personally, I'm pretty happy that the video games got back on their feet because let's be honest,